2026 has brought some important changes to French immigration law, especially around language requirements. And many of you have been asking the same questions. Do I need a French test? Which level applies to me? And should I take the DELF or the TCF? So today, I'm asking Allison Lounes from Your France formation to clarify who is concerned, who is exempt, and how to prepare without choosing the wrong test. I wanted to ask a specialist such as you to speak to us about the changes regarding language requirements and visa.
Sure. So as of January 1st, there are two new requirements for renewing carte de séjour, but they don't apply to everybody. For the language requirement, there's currently no language requirement for getting a visa, and there's no language requirement for renewing a 1-year carte de séjour. So if you have, for example, a visitor carte de séjour or any 1-year titre de séjour, there's no language requirement. But if you want a multi-year card, so a card that is valid for 2 years or more, not every status offers that, but for a 2 to 4 year card, you would need an A2 level of French. For a 10-year residence card, you would need a B1 level of French. And then if you want to apply for naturalization at some point, you would need a B2 level of French. Now, there are two main types of exams that you can take to achieve these levels. And unfortunately, the language test, if you have to take a language assessment with OFI, the Office Français de l'Immigration et de l'Intégration, as part of your arrival contract, if you sign a contrat d'intégration républicaine when you arrive in France, they give you an attestation that you've tested out of A1 or A2, but unfortunately that doesn't work for the multi-year card. So there are two types of tests. First is the DELF, and it's actually 6 different tests on the European language scale. So you have the DILF, the Diplôme Initial en Langue Française, which is A1 or A2. There's the DELF, the Diplôme d'études en Langue Française, which is B1 or B2. That's low intermediate or high intermediate. And then there's the DELF, the Diplôme Approfondi en Langue Française, which is C1 or C2. And those are all pass-fail. So like there are 4 different sections and you have to get a minimum number of points on each section. And either you pass the exam or you don't. And if you pass, you have that level for life. So if you take like the DELF B2 in 2026, and then you don't apply for naturalization until 2036, that DELF diploma will still be valid. And assuming...
Which is a really good news.
Yeah, assuming that the French level stays the same for naturalization, like you could still use it, 10 years down the line.
It's not a photography of your level, because some tests are more like a photography of your level. You go, you don't sign up for a level, but they tell you, okay, what is your current level according to the result. The DELF is different, and the difficulty is to pick which one should I take. The A2, the B1, but as you mentioned, it's valid for life. So yeah, that's really good.
And you mentioned, which is more like a photo of your level at a particular moment in time, is the TCF, the Test des connaissances du français. And then there's a specific one if you're applying for French nationality called the TCF ANF, the Test des connaissances du français accès à la nationalité française. I believe there's also one that's specific to Canada, but obviously you want like the French ones. And those, I believe there's 5 skills. There's listening comprehension, reading comprehension, grammar, writing, and speaking, where they record you and grade you. And then you can have a different level on each skill, and they'll give you the average. So if you get A2 in speaking, but C1 in reading comprehension and grammar, and then B1 in writing, like you might round out to a B2, but you don't have a B2 level in each skill individually. So those tests are only valid for 2 years. So the important thing to know, that the TCF tests are given more frequently, I believe, and there are a lot more test centers that offer them. And the DELF is usually given once a month, and it's offered in like the Alliance Française, or there are some specific test sites where you can take it. And normally you have to sign up at least a month in advance, and it takes like a month or so to get your results back. So you want to make sure that you're signing up with plenty of time so that you can get your results if you need to submit them for a residence permit renewal or anything like that.
And you can do it abroad as well, not only in France. You can do
Exactly. Yeah, there's test centers all over the world. So if you go to, it used to be CIEP, now it's, I think, France Éducation Internationale, where you can find a map of testing centers and find them all over. I had to do this. I went to Yale to take the TCF back in 2007 or 8, before I applied to my French master's program. So if you're not in France, like they're probably only offered in big cities. It might only be once or twice a year. So, certainly do it in advance if you are planning on applying to university programs or things like that. But in France, it's pretty much every month and you'll find them all over the place. So it's not as big of a deal. Now, you're exempt from the language level. If you have a visitor visa that's renewable every year, you're exempt from it. You're also exempt if you're over 65. If you are on a visitor visa and then you want to get a 10-year card, if you're over 65, you don't have to do the language test. If you're under 65, but you're eligible for the 10-year card because you've lived more than 5 years in France, then you would still have to do the language test. So it's
Thank you, because there is a lot of confusion, I think, around this very, very topic. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, it's important to know, are you going to be exempt when you become eligible for that 10-year card? And then in terms of the civics exam, there are 3 different civics exams. There's the regular, it's called CSP, Carte de Séjour Pluriannuelle. And that's, again, if you're going from a 1-year card to a 2 to 4-year card. This would be like if you're the spouse of a French citizen, so you have vie privée familiale. If you have a regular salarié, if you have profession libérale entrepreneur, those are the main visa types where you would be eligible for a carte de séjour pluriannuelle. And then there's a separate test, which is the CR, carte de résident. The questions get a little bit more difficult. The language level also, because a carte de séjour pluriannuelle has an A2 language level and carte de résident is a B1 language level, the questions can also be a little bit more complex. And then if you're applying for naturalization, there's a specific one for nationality as well. And that one is obviously the most difficult and has the highest language level.
You need to study as well, as you mentioned, the culture, and you have all those citizenship questions.
Yeah, and there's questions about which of the following authors belongs to the Romanticism school, school of thought or literature movement. Which of the following painters is French?
Yeah, it could feel a bit arbitrary, but I think that's why it's important to get an actual preparation for those questions, and even for the language test. Sometimes I say to my students that it doesn't necessarily reflect your level, but sometimes it reflects the preparation, because you really need to have a certain preparation to understand the way that the questions are framed. It's important to at least try those former exams to see if it's all right.
Yeah, and they have a lot of the questions are on the website for the test.
Can put the link below.
Yeah, because there's a list, but it's not really an exhaustive list and they don't give you any of the answers. So the test is multiple choice, but the list of questions on the website is just name all the symbols of the French Republic, or the first article of the French Constitution guarantees what freedom. We've had clients who have been in France for a couple of years who have taken these exams and who have done very well. We have clients who have gotten 40 out of 40. So if you study a little bit, if you're in France, if you have been learning French, if you're vaguely aware of French culture, it shouldn't be a problem, particularly for Americans, for Brits, for people who have gone to school up into a university level. It's not a hard exam. The people who are going to struggle with this are the people who did not get up to a university education, who may not be the best readers, who are not super literate in their native language or in French. And there's certainly some critiques of this exam that can be made there. But I think for people who are educated in their native language and who have had practice taking multiple choice exams and who are studying French, it's not going to be, and who have grown up with Western Republican and democratic values that are similar to French Republican values, it's not going to be excessively challenging.
I hear the feedback that it's easier than we think it is, because it can seem overwhelming when you start studying the broad variety of questions that they may ask you. Merci beaucoup. And to sum up in a few lines, for you, the 2026 changes makes it way harder, or do you think that is not such a change?
I think the hardest part is trying to get everything done on a timeline. It used to be that if, for example, someone came with a profession libérale visa and and they were going to set up their self-employment activity. The theoretical timeline was like, okay, you get a visa for 1 year. At the end of the first year, if you've set up your business and you're making some money, you'll get a 4-year card at renewal. And with these changes, it becomes very difficult to get that 4-year card from the beginning, because basically 1 year is not necessarily enough time to get the business up and running, do all 4 of the OFI mandatory visits, the civics classes, take the DELF and take the civics test. So there were already a lot of things to do during that first year, and this has added now 2 more exams that you need to take, and obviously you need to sign up in advance, and then it takes a couple of weeks to get the results, and at the same time you have to be doing whatever professional activity you're doing, and some people don't even get called in for their OFI visits early on in the year. And so I think that realistically you need to plan on having a 1-year carte de séjour for at least the first 2 years. Some people may get everything done in the first year, but it's not necessarily realistic to think that that's going to.
Good to get ready ahead of time and be realistic about the time frame.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all your precious tips. And of course, I'm going to share the links towards your website and your socials and your contacts. So if people want to go a little bit further and have an assessment with you, they can reach you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Allison. À bientôt.
À bientôt.
Au revoir.